Okay, so we've got the religion of the philosophers, which basically a God that is so perfect that he has no interest in any of us and has no idea what we're doing down here. However, because nevertheless the universe still has, well, the universe as a whole doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, and it's just a kind of a accidental side product of God's existence. But if we understand how things work in the universe, then we do discover that we have a purpose, because it's our purpose to actualize our potential and achieve union with the truth. And for that, it is very useful to focus on God and contemplate Him. Okay, even though He doesn't care about whether we contemplate Him or not, and it helps very much to lead a certain lifestyle. Basically to do good deeds and to avoid doing destructive things to ourselves and to others. And if we do this, the end game is that the individual mind fuses and becomes one with the cosmic mind.
What?
Okay, which is not God, by the way, because its cosmic mind is an angel.
How much of the universe did they perceive at that time? Because they didn't have telescopes yet.
No. They perceived the universe starting from down here, looking up through the sky, and they saw the constellations.
That was it.
And that's the end of the universe. And it's really a very small universe too.
Yeah.
Okay, there's shall we say, 10 concentric crystalline spheres, right? One within the other, and the outermost sphere has the fixed stars in it. Okay, and the fixed stars are the stars that don't change their positions relative to each other. So, if anybody knows what the word planet means, I think the word planet means a wanderer. And the reason why they would use this word for a planet is because they looked up in the sky and they noticed that everything moves from east to west. If there's a certain star, it rises, at the beginning of the evening it rises in the east, follows the same direction as the sun basically, and sets in the west. And all the stars move together. In other words, they all move, but they don't change their location relative to each other. So if you see Orion's belt, that three stars in a diagonal, okay, those stars don't change relative to each other. They just move across the sky in one configuration. Okay, so those are called the kochavim hakvuim. Those are the fixed stars. But then suddenly you notice, whoa, there's that little guy, that little red-ish kind of little planet, or that little red star, and it's moving differently. As a matter of fact, rather strangely, at certain times of the year, it rises in the east, and then it goes up, and then it goes backwards for a while, and then it goes forwards. Okay, which was darn hard to explain, because especially since they think that the stars are fixed into these solid crystalline spheres. Otherwise, they would fall to the earth, or whatever, So, but they did notice that there were some stars that didn't follow the same pattern as the constellations. They didn't follow the same patterns as the fixed stars. So they called them wanderers, which are planets. And eventually they counted 7 of them, which, by the way, does not include the Earth, because the Earth is considered to be the center of the universe. So the Earth doesn't move. Everything around the Earth moves, starting with, let's say, Mercury, Venus. Then comes actually the way they have it set up is like this. I believe it's first the Moon, then the Sun, then Mercury, then Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Okay, and Saturn does have they have some relationship to the days of the week. Okay, as in Sunday being the day of the sun, and Monday being the day of the moon, and Saturday being the day of Saturn, and the others also whatever. Once upon a time, I guess they did. Although we picked up the names of the days of the week in English are taken very strongly from the Norse mythologies also. So you'll have Thor's Day, hammer of the you know you'll have Thor's Day and Freya's Day or Freya's Day, whatever. And Woden's Day, Wednesday, right? So that all kind of got mixed together over there. But so the point is that if you somehow or another they arrived at the conclusion that there are 12 constellations in the fixed stars, and that there are 7 travelers amongst the somehow between the sphere of the fixed stars and the world of existence and decay, which is our world. So there's another 7 planets. There's another 7 spheres in there, and in the world of existence and decay, you have four. No, well, no. Actually, I'm telling you, you have 4 elements. Okay, now this kind of plays some sort of role in Sefer Yetzirah also. Okay, because although the elements seem to be a little bit different, because in Sefer Yetzirah there are 3 mothers, Aleph Mem Shin. Then you have 7 letters, Beged Kef Ret, by the way, which is not really in keeping with ordinary Hebrew grammar, but there are 7 letters that are supposed to change pronunciation if they have a dot or if they don't. And then you have 12 regular letters that remain, and so there you have the same correspondence, 12-7-4 or 12-7-3, as the case may be. Okay? But that's just a lengthy aside. And one of the things that really struck me when I first learned Kuzari is that the philosopher doesn't get actually refuted. If anything, the king tells him, listen, everything that you say makes perfect sense. Okay, I'm ready to sign up with you, except for one thing. In terms of logic and reason, okay, the philosophers seem to have it nixed, except for one thing. Says the king, except for my dream. I keep having this dream. My desire, my actions are not okay, but my desires are okay. My intentions are good, but my actions are all messed up. Now, if you're the philosopher, okay, I guess maybe a philosopher talking to a king knows how to hold his tongue. I say, listen, so your dream is a little wrong, okay? Your dream is maybe you should eat less spicy foods before you go to sleep or something. Don't, right? But the Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, in writing this, he basically the king rejects philosophy or religious philosophy based simply upon the idea that my dream indicates that God does have something that He wants us to do, and this seems to be a very deep human intuition. Okay, and you're not going to convince me that it's not so. All right, says the philosopher, and he goes home. He does, however, point out, or Yehuda Halevi points out that because people have this belief that God wants me to do something specific, that he wants me to do some kind of worship. So this creates endless possibilities for human conflict, which I think any liberally minded atheistic person would certainly agree. Okay, it would say religion is very, very bad for human beings because it gives you all sorts of reasons to kill each other needlessly. Okay, because now you can kill each other over what do you think God really wants you to do. Now, if you're a philosopher, you recognize that God doesn't really want anything out of you. The only thing that you can do for yourself is to maximize your potential and reach union with the truth. As far as what kind of religion, what kind of gods you bow down to, what kind of sacrifices you offer, whether you do this or that, it doesn't matter. Nothing to fight over. You can bow down to Mecca 5 times a day. You can bow down to a cross on Sundays. It really doesn't matter. Okay, and we philosophers think it's completely reprehensible that human beings kill each other over these things. Okay? And by the way, in Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's days, of course, the Muslims and Christians were killing each other with great gusto over over what is the what kind of actions does God want us or not want us to do, and who's right, Muhammad or the Pope. So,
The
yeah.
philosophers, I mean, the history that we learned was Christians and Muslims. How prevalent was their point of view, or was it just sort of an elite that sort of said, was an elite that had these thoughts, and really the masses, the people were either no extreme or Muslim.
Well, I think that's fair. Okay, you're there's certainly something which was true. Well, there was certainly something which was true. I think I need to. That's a little bit. That's a little bit over the top. I can't say really, but I certainly have the impression that at least with some Muslims, you had Muslim philosophers that were, from the religious point of view, going through the motions. Okay, and that there were some Muslims that were, let's say, enlightened Muslims that viewed Islam itself as a religion like any other, and we participate in it, and we're not going to go against it because when you start undermining people's religion, you also tend to turn them into much worse than they were before. But we, as enlightened people, we're philosophers, and we understand how things really work, and we understand what the real point of it is. Whether such people existed amongst Christians, I think it's much more doubtful. Okay, but my understanding is that you had some Muslims, and today, if you go looking for Sufis, you will find very often that you have Sufis that were basically of the opinion that all religions are equally good, and I just happen to be a Muslim. Okay, and they were persecuted and everything. But they did exist. Okay, so basically in the end, if you take it, yeah, all the religions are okay. They all lead to the same place. But anyway, just to go back to what I think is the key point over here, is the king doesn't have anything logical to say against the philosopher. Which, like I said, when I was reading this as a youngster, that was very, very disappointing to me, because I expected to see some sort of I got proved Judaism was okay. Well, no, there's philosophers. Yeah, you're all fantastic. It's just it's not working very well for me because of the dream that I'm having. Like that's how convincing is that? I don't know. So anyway. It took a long time for me to get the point, I think. But that's one of you're learning this. That's one of the things that you have to ask yourself. If Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is trying to convince us of the truth of Judaism, is this really? And the major enemy over here is the philosophers. I wouldn't say enemy, but the major counter balance. The antithesis of Judaism over here is philosophy. Now Christianity and Islam are not antitheses to Judaism. They are. They're groups that basically took over what Judaism teaches and did something with it on their own, which they then came to believe supersedes the originals, and we can argue with them over that. But every Christian, every Muslim, essentially has to acknowledge that Yetziat Mitzrayim happened, and it happened to us. And nobody argues on that point. Okay, so the real antithesis to Judaism is philosophy, and we're not coming at with a very, 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 very strong proof against it. Okay.
Is the king of a religion?
Yes, he's a pagan.
Oh, okay.
He's a Kuzarian king, and he worships idols, right? And he's looking, and like I said, he assumes this, so this feeling like God wants something of me apparently runs very, very, very deep in the human heart, and you have to take this into account. It's not the kind of intuition that just some stupid person thought up. It runs deep and we need to account for it. Okay, so he went on from there to bring in the Christians and being the Christian and the Muslim. Now, here too, the Christian tells the story of the birth and crucifixion of Jesus, and that he's God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, all wrapped up in one, which is a little bit hard to swallow. Okay, and it's I don't know whether it's difficult to understand. It's certainly not easy to understand, and it's a hard thing to swallow, and it casts Christianity into a kind of a doubt over whether it really qualifies as a monotheistic religion. Okay, so that's quite problematic. But you know what? Look, it happened, or it didn't happen. Well, if it didn't happen, then the whole thing is okay. Then the whole thing is useless. If it did happen, however, well, boy, we all have to revise our principles here, right? And it's funny. So the king kind of elegantly skirts the whole thing. But by the way, if you were to go to, I don't know, Kentucky or something, and go listen to a kind of a highbrow Christian apologist, okay, he would make a big deal over the evidence for Christianity. The evidence for Christianity. We have the Gospels, we have the Apostles, we have all of these people who suddenly woke up one day and decided to throw away their idols and let themselves get burnt in the Colosseum for Yeshu, right? And obviously the resurrection was witnessed, and he was seen after he came back from the dead, and people participated in this, and people saw him, and obviously somebody must have seen him, because otherwise how does this whole thing get rolling? Oh, it was a dead guy, he came back to life, and now I'm saved. Okay. But if you have a whole group of 80, 90, 100, 200 people who claim to have been there on Pentecost when he made an appearance, there's a massive evidence. There's a weight of testimony over here. So yeah, go for the evidence. Go for the evidence. And a lot of Christian apologists are working that line very, 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 very strongly. Yeah, the evidence is overwhelming. The overwhelming evidence for the death and resurrection of Jesus. Okay, yeah,
It took him 400 years after he left
No, a couple of
to come back to become a religion.
Well, look,
An offshoot of Judaism.
Okay, so I'm just presenting their, I'm presenting what they would say. Okay, and what they would say is that this is a life transforming thing, because look, basically if you don't believe in Yeshu, then you're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell. Nothing's going to make any difference. And if you believe in him, that's then everything is wonderful. And you owe it to yourself to investigate this matter very, 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 very carefully, because your life depends on it. That's the statement. Okay, now. So when you think about how the king kind of side skirts this, he basically he says, listen, this religion is not logical. Okay, as a matter of fact, logic and reason rejects most of the things that you've just said. However, when something becomes completely proven to somebody or shown to be true to somebody, according to what he has seen and according to what his experience in life is, until he believes it with his entire heart, and he has no alternative but to accept the reality of this thing as it has become, and as it has been shown to him to be true. So then he's going to start using all sorts of very subtle logic to explain what it is that he saw. Right? And so there are things that you would never believe unless you see them, but once you see them, you have to explain them, right? You can maybe, I guess you could go to Tibet and you can see a levitating monk. He's floating there 10 feet off the ground. There's nothing holding him up. I mean, there's the phony levitating sadhu that always seems to need to hold on to a stick while he's levitating. Ask him, if you're levitating, why do you need the stick? Well, actually, the stick's holding him up. But a real case of levitation. It's absolutely undeniable. You have nothing to say about this. So then, you're going to have to start reconfiguring your thoughts about things, because if this has happened, well, okay, I got to explain it to myself somehow. So I'll work out the logic. I'll come up with something subtle, right? And then he gets to the punchline. Aval, but ani motze da'ati notel lekabel et advarim haelu kamitiyim. I don't find myself inclined to accept the things that you say as true. Ki chadashim hem be'enai, they're new to me. V'lo gadalti alehem, I wasn't raised with them. And ulai mutelet efu achova lachkor et hadavar ad tachlito. So I am still obligated somehow, or I'm still obliged to investigate this thing until its limit. Now, I don't know. That's this translation, and if I understand what he's saying correctly is that look, this is not part of my experience, and it didn't come and bite me on the nose, and therefore I don't have any particular interest in spending all the infinite resources and time that I would have in order to investigate it for myself. Okay, so I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you very much, and let you go. And of course, you can just imagine, Reverend Rick Peters, but you owe it to yourself to invest because your life depends on this. He's saying, no, well, listen, I don't feel like I need to listen to this. It seems to me to be terribly unreasonable. I don't have a reason why to do pretzel logic in order to justify this and accept it just because you say so, or 100, or you claim that there's another 200 witnesses once upon a time that saw the resurrection. Now, so once again, he's not really saying anything decisive, any kind of decisive refutation of Christianity. He's saying that it's not part of my experience. And therefore, I don't have to twist my logic to accommodate it. Okay. Now, then of course he calls in the Muslim, and the Muslim gives him somewhat the same spiel, except without the virgin birth and all that sort of stuff. And then he says that, well, we really don't have any great miracle stories, but the Quran is its own miracle. The Quran is self-authenticating. Now, how is that? Because if you were to listen to it in the original Arabic, it would be so beautiful and so amazing that that no human being could come up with this. Now, you can be skeptical if you like, but any Muslim will tell you that it's true. You're going to ask any Arab about how wonderful and amazing the Quran is, how beautiful it is in the original Arabic. Ask any one of them, and they'll tell you, yeah, it's absolutely so. No human being can come up with a text like this. Okay? Now, I mean, okay, so like, what are you going to do? Well, you could say, well, you owe it to yourself to learn Arabic, spend 30 years learning Arabic, go live in, go live in Saudi Arabia until you really, really, really know Arabic, and then you learn classical Arabic, okay, and then you can hear the Quran in its original, and hopefully it will resonate, and you'll know that it's absolutely the word of Allah. Okay? Also takes a tremendous investment of time, to discover the truly self-authenticating sacred book, right? So the king has a similar response that he does. I think it's quite a similar response as he has to the Christians. If if somebody wants to take somebody and urge him to go in the direction of faith and believe in God, and to show him that it is true that God speaks with flesh and blood, and the person that you're trying to convince denies this, he says, "No, I don't believe in it," right? So then you really have to prove it to him with facts that are undisputed, well known, that and that you can't deny them. And even if you brought all this pile of facts to demonstrate that this could be so, it would still be very difficult for him to believe that God speaks with human beings. So remember, the God of the philosophers is completely apathetic to human beings. So it doesn't really directly talk to anybody. Even though supposedly there's supposed to be some sort of level of prophecy that you achieve when your mind becomes fused with the truth. But that's not the same thing as saying God talks to you, right? Because God doesn't talk to you. And he says, Asher lepel asher b'sifrei. Now, about this wonder that is in your book that is written in Arabic, well, somebody who doesn't speak Arabic, a non-Arabic speaker like myself, okay, has no ability to discern essentially whether this book is extremely wonderful and special. And if you were to read it in front of me, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between it and any other book in Arabic. Okay, so what is he saying here again about Arabic? Well, about Islam. Well, basically he's saying pretty much the same thing. Okay, in order for your religion to prove itself to me, I have to be an Arab. I have to be in this group. And if I'm not in this group because I don't speak Arabic, then the whole thing falls dead with me. So basically, the king's two responses are basically relativistic. Listen, you guys believe in it, that's fine, but this cannot be my truth because it has not become verified within my experience. The only experience that I actually have is this dream where God says He wants me to find what it is what it is that I'm supposed to do. That's what that's what I know, but I can't absorb, no matter how truthful you tell me they are, or no matter how many proofs you claim to have, or no matter how self-authenticating the Quran is to someone who knows Arabic. I don't know Arabic, so the Quran doesn't authenticate itself to me. So therefore, it's just not part of my reality.
Don't you have the excuse for the religion?
Well, once again, what makes Judaism any different?
Exactly.
Really, what makes Judaism any different?
More witnesses.
Because you don't need to know Hebrew to pray.
Well, true. Okay. But you see, I mean, the real thing is that most people when they read the Kuzari, okay, the message that they're going to get is Judaism is different than Islam and Christianity, because the burden of testimony is so overwhelming and so well attested to and so accepted by everyone here meaning all the Christians and all the Muslims, that it's absolutely incontrovertible. So I can contradict Christianity and say, nah, it didn't happen. It was only just a couple of hundred people on Pentecost, after the crucifixion, and who knows what they really saw, and blah 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 blah. Okay, and as far as Muslims, well, it was. I know Muhammad's the only one who heard the Quran revealed to him. Everybody else just believes Muhammad, which is, by the way, not what the king actually said. Okay, and it's also an argument that wouldn't fly with your average Muslim, because your average Muslim is, once again, the book itself is self-authenticating. So, but
How about the Book of Mormon?
how about the Book of
Brass
Mormon?
plates in his backyard and is supposed to suddenly have a new religion.
You know what? I'll tell you.
Anybody can do that.
Well, anyway, I must say that the Book of Mormon is very far from being self-authenticating, and it's a. I don't want to. I'll waste a lot of time talking about all the things that happened to Joseph Smith, and all the times that he was famously wrong, and so his status as a prophet is somewhat lacking. I think his polygamy deal. Why did the Lord command Joseph Smith to begin with polygamy? Could be that Joseph Smith really wanted.
It's really happy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the Muslim sage says there are many signs that have been demonstrated by our prophets. I don't know who's about by our prophet, but no one of them brings conclusive proof that you have to accept his Torah. And the Kuzari, the king replies, listen, the soul is not inclined on its own to concede that there is a point of contact between God and human beings, unless you would show a clear miracle. Right? Ki im bir'otam mofet asher yihafech etzem echad le'etzem acher. You have to show me a miracle where something becomes something else. You really have to hit me with a miracle. Mofet shehakol ro'im, and it has to be a miracle that everybody sees. Ki kamohu lo yuchal la'asot ki imi shabara et kol advarim me'ayin. The only one who can do this kind of miracle is the one that created everything from nothing. So if you want to show me an instance where there has been some kind of contact between God and human beings, that event would have to be, first of all, have to be miraculous on its own, but it would also be accompanied by all sorts of other inexplicable miraculous events, because what you're dealing with is an event that's logically impossible, okay, at least philosophically logically impossible. And when the impossible happens, what is that? That's a miracle. So you got something impossible. If something impossible is happening, then you're gonna see signs and wonders that are popping up all over the place. Ve'af kam zot, and what's more, if you have a sign that was done for a great many people that saw it eye to eye, not that they heard it from somebody who saw it in a dream, or not that it came to them through some sort of tradition from one person to another. It would have to be a real miracle that you see with your own eyes. And another condition, that you investigate this miracle or this sign or wonder, one investigation, one aspect after another, so there's no doubt in any human heart that this might be some sort of imagination or some sort of hallucination or some sort of witchcraft. Then and only then does the soul accept, and then with difficulty, this incredible big thing, which means to say that the creator of this world and the next world and all the angels, who does the heavens and the luminaries, would connect with this gross materiality, namely, I'm referring to human beings, and speak to human beings, and have human beings fulfill his requests, or no, actually, no, I gotta go. I got that wrong. Yitchaber mechomer achor hazeh, who would connect to this lowly material, namely human being, v'yidaber imo, and speak to him. Oh, and fulfill his requests and desires. Yeah. So because part of praying is that we're going to pray to God, and God's going to do what we want. Okay. So this is so it's so impossible in a sense, rationally speaking, that we really gotta you need massive proof. Okay, so the kind of proof would have to be incontrovertible. It would have to be public. It would have to have happened in the eyes of lots and lots and lots of people. It wouldn't have to be some sort of Baba Maisa that we heard, or some sort of situation where Muhammad says, "I saw Jibril and this is what he told me," and nobody else has seen Jibril together with Muhammad. That won't do. So after the Kuzari says this, so the Muslim sage responds, but wait a second, our holy book is full of stories about miraculous events that happen to people in public, in the eyes of everyone. It's full of stories about Moshe and the children of Israel, and these are stories that nobody can deny. They're incontrovertible. Kol asher asah Eloka b'Paro, asher, everything that God did to Paro, split the sea and brought us through on dry land, and that He desired them, and He brought through the Israelites that He desired, and He drowned all the people that He was angry at, and after that He brought the man down and the Slav for 40 years, and He spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai, and He caused the sun to stand still for Joshua, and He helped him with his war against the mighty, and everything else that happened before that, the flood and the overturning of Sodom and Amorah. All of these are publicly known until there's absolutely no room for doubt. lest you think that there's any kind of any kind of subterfuge or imaginary imaginary tatua dimayon, some sort of trick of the imagination. Right.
He's validating the Jewish part.
So basically, when it comes to the core thesis that God speaks to human beings and has a relationship with human beings, which is, by the way, God asks us to do things, and we ask God to do things, right? And it works. And the only place that you have proof here that could be sufficiently convincing is in the testimony that comes from the Torah. Right. Now, it just so happens to be that you shouldn't, just speaking on behalf of the Muslim, you should not therefore go learn the Torah. No, because we got the true story in the Quran. Because when God was telling when God was telling all this stuff to Muhammad, so he told Muhammad how it really happened, not how the Jews distorted it for themselves and everything.
CNN.
Okay, yeah. So and according to Muslims, we did a number on the true religion, and we twisted it, and so therefore Muhammad had to come to set the record straight and tell you how it really is. But the events that Muhammad is talking about, of course, were publicly verified. Because they were publicly verified at the time they happened. They happened to the Jews. They happened to Pharaoh Mitzrayim, and they happened in public, and nobody has any doubts about it. Right? And nobody has any doubts about it. So you can consider the idea that God chooses human beings to be completely proven, right? So, the particular kind of Torah that you want to get will alter between Christians and Muslims, okay? And what they have to say may or may not be so convincing, but everybody rests upon the foundation that God does have a relationship with human beings, and the proof to that is what happened to Israel. That's the only place in history where you have such a, where you have such an event described.
I presume the philosopher would say it never happened.
Well, I don't. That's a very good question. What would the philosopher say?
Since he doesn't involve himself in our doings, why would he take us out of Egypt? Why would he do all these missing? So I presume that the philosopher said, no, it didn't happen. It's just a figment of your imagination.
Well, undoubtedly, that is even. I'm not saying about a modern day philosopher, but even the Kuzari's philosopher would say exactly that. What you're talking about is an impossibility. I wasn't there. You all believe it. I mean, look, in the end, all of the people who believe in all this stuff believe in it because they heard it from us. Okay, so that kind of takes everything back to a relatively small part of the human race. It's not the entire human race that knows about these things. The entire human race knows about these things because they got it from our Torah. Now, why the rest of the human race believed our Torah is probably a good question too. But say the philosopher would say, look, that's so. What he would do, he would undoubtedly do the Kuzari trick, okay, which is, listen, this is not part of my experience, and I don't see any particular reason why I would have to accept it, and I don't really see any reason why I would have to be afraid that God would send me to hell because I don't believe in it or because I don't follow this particular kind of practice. If God had wanted me to follow this particular kind of practice, He would. First of all, put the intuition in my heart that He wants something out of me. Let's start with that, and then on top of that, He would have, I don't know, made me Jewish, or He would have provided some sort of miraculous verifications to the Greeks, which He didn't. Okay, so it's all in the yeshiva world. It's very common to see all of this as extremely convincing on the factual level, and I guess this is a good time to pause and mention that there is something out there called the Kuzari proof. You can search for this online, and it's a reformulation of something which is supposedly taken out of the Kuzari, and it serves as the proof for Judaism. If you go to an Arachim seminar, okay, you will be presented with this proof. It's really quite simple. Okay. Question how well. There's two questions here. How well does it really hold up? Okay, which is an objective question. The other question is, did Rabbi Yehuda Halevi himself actually mean it? And that's another question. We're going to have to deal with both these questions. But let me just basically say that, give you the, to the extent that I can do a short version of anything, let me give you the Kuzari proof. Okay. Let's say you come to a group of people. Let's say it's factually true what the archaeologists say, that Israelites were living in the land of Canaan. They basically are Canaanites themselves. They've gone through some cultural metamorphoses that seem to set them apart from the regular Canaanites. And there they are at the beginning of the 12th century BCE, and they're beginning just to spread out in the hill country, okay. And there's no point really in searching for Israelite origins in Egypt or in anywhere else, because the Israelites are basically indigenous to the land, okay. Mm-hmm. Now, so then how do you explain the Torah? It's good, we have this whole tradition that somebody must have believed in. Okay, that says that we went through an exodus, we went out of Egypt, we had the miracles, we have Matan Torah, and so forth and so on. So how do you explain that? Well, the archaeologist will tell you that it's a psychological thing. There were some sociological or societal pressures on this particular ethnic subdivision of the Canaanites that they suddenly wanted desperately to set themselves apart from all the other Canaanites, and they came up with this story in order to demonstrate to themselves, or in order to explain to themselves, that they're really not from around here at all. Okay, and that's pretty much, you could listen to Professor Finkelstein and any one of his YouTube lectures, which are definitely not good for your emunah, by the way. But he goes into this basically at great length. So there's a psychological desire why these people want to they don't want to be considered Canaanites anymore, and therefore they create this mythology for themselves, which gives them origins outside the land of Canaan. That's the theory. Now, the Kuzari proof comes from exactly the opposite direction. Let's say that I walk into this group of indigenous Canaanites who maybe they have some sort of psychological inclination to see themselves as distinct and different from other Canaanites, for whatever reason. I get up and I start to tell them the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And they say, "What do you think we are, stupid? I mean, listen, my father's been here sitting on the land, farming and eking out a living, and his grandfather, his great-grandfather. None of my ancestors ever told me anything about this, and you're telling me that we all came from Egypt, Goshen, okay, and we were taken out with miracles, and we had 8 men in the desert for 40 years. I would have heard something about this from my dad, right? Wouldn't I have?" So the new religion gets automatically rejected, right? It's that simple. Now the problem with it is it also turns into a kind of a self-authenticating thing. We Jews believe it's true, and therefore it must be true, because if it wasn't true, how did we ever come to believe it? Now so a lot of people just don't like that kind of self-referential logic. It's like I'm proving it to myself because it's so. Because I know it's so, therefore it's so, right? Which, if you really want to prove something, you have to actually start with the assumption that it might not be so, and then prove that it's so, not work the other way. But you think about it practically. Look, I'm going to walk over to a bunch of Israelites and tell them that 300 years before, events happened that your ancestors never told you about, that you know nothing about, that you never heard of, and now because of that, you have to do all of this stuff. Like, you have to not eat pigs anymore. You have to not worship idolatry, which of course they never really. Israelites never really accepted that until the Churban Beit HaMikdash, according to this theory, since they were indigenously Canaanite. So what reason would they have not to, to start smashing their idols? As a matter of fact, why would anybody trying to sell these people a religion or an identity even try to give them that religion? Because it's obviously so inappropriate for them. Why would, so they wouldn't have accepted it. I wouldn't even try to sell it. So who's selling, so who's selling this stuff? And why do they expect to be believed? And it would be really hard to take a group of people and convince them that the history that they have heard about for generations, right, is simply not true. And here, this is it. Right, so
If you had somebody who went over to one of the American Indian tribes and they told you that, would that make it true? Or the Ethiopians? You do it the other way around. You have those Ethiopian people
right.
who would tell you all about Yetzias Mitzrayim because they were part Jewish, or at least knew about it and got it all passed down. It's the reverse of what you're saying. Does that make it true?
I don't quite get it. I mean, yeah, in the case of Ethiopians, the logical thing to think would be, yeah, they're Jewish. Okay,
Some
they're
American Indian tribes.
that they're Jewish or that they're American Indians.
No, that they came when the earth cracked and they were part of the 10 tribes. One of them was.
Oh, I don't. Okay, I've never heard any Native Americans make a claim to being part of the 10 tribes. But for argument's sake, if I went to a group of Native Americans and I tried to convince them that if I wanted to convince them that the virgin birth and Jesus and the Son of God and all that sort of stuff, I could, but primarily because I'm coming from the outside and I'm telling them what I believe based upon a history that isn't their history. If I come to them and I try to tell them that I don't know, chief whatever another was not really, that wasn't his real name. He was really Moshe, and he really came from Canaan, and it was really Torah mitzvahs, and you guys all forgot about them. But here's the Torah again, Okay, so then I don't think that the Indians would accept that, because it completely contradicts whatever their own history is. Okay, now so this is the Kuzari proof, and on the whole, aside from the fact that it's self-authenticating, it has a certain, it's convincing. It's in a practical sort of way, it's convincing. You can't just go with a bunch of stories that nobody ever heard of to a people that you're claiming to tell them about their own history and tell them that something else happened. It wasn't really Abraham Lincoln who fought the war between the North and the South. It was really two soccer teams, or something like that. And they were kicking this ball around, and suddenly all the slaves went free. I mean,
Take Moshe Rabbeinu himself, who was brought up in Egypt, and he obviously was very influenced by the customs of the religion of Egypt. And there's this lady who says I'm your mother. And this is not true. But what really happened there was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and there was Jacob, and the Almighty sent Joseph down to Egypt, and we actually came. I mean, you could say the same about that. Moshe Rabbeinu would turn around and say, "Really? What do you mean?"
That's a good point. I think that what we're going to see as we go on, okay, is that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi concedes that when Moshe was selling, let's just fast forward. Moshe comes to the burning bush. He has a message from God. The message from God contains within it the history that now he needs to sell to these slaves in Egypt. Okay, and he has to sell this to them before he even begins to talk to Paro. He has to sell it to his own people. Why are they going to accept it? Now you could say that they're going to accept it because it jibes completely with their own received traditions. Now you could say that, but it's not really clear to me, at any rate, that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is actually going to say that. All right, so I'm kind of leaving it kind of like open. What his Okay, what his approach is going to be, because
There's the old story about the boy who came home from Cheder, and his father said, "What did you learn in Cheder?" And he said, "Well, we learned about Yetzias Mitzrayim." "Oh, really? What did they teach you about Yetzias Mitzrayim?" And he said, "Well, there were guns and planes and tanks." And the father said, "That's what they taught you about Yetzias Mitzrayim." So he said, "Daddy, if I told you what they taught us in the Cheder, you wouldn't believe a word of it."
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So that anyway, but that is the Kuzari proof. And if, like I said, if you go to any Haredi seminar where they're going to try to convince you of the truth of the Torah, that's what they're going to come at you with. Okay. They consider that they consider that they're heavy guns in terms of the proof value of it. Now, just for the heck of it, I'll give you a constellation where you could actually take a group of people and convince them that their history was different than what they imagined. Okay, and this is one of them would be in a situation of extreme psychological distress, where you're really searching for something to explain why I'm here. Like if you figure that you have somebody who's got amnesia, or let's imagine for some reason, or you have a group of people, they don't remember who they are. Their parents never told them anything. They're just sitting here and they feel aimless and miserable. So they could be inclined to accept something that that they have no idea what it is. But oh yeah, that's our story. Well, that sounds really good. Wow. Okay, and move along with it that way. Another situation, if you figure that Jews, right? Now the 10 tribes, the Aseret HaShvatim, they went off to nowhere because we don't know anything about what they thought or what they said. Right? Maybe we do a little bit, but we don't have them around to testify. The only thing that we have is the kingdom of the kingdom of Yehuda, with the Beit HaMikdash and the whole thing. So sure, it's pretty easy to assume that okay. Let's get all of Shevet Yehuda to believe in this stuff. Well, listen, there were times when basically the whole country of Yehuda was limited to one little Jerusalem. It's pretty much like that. And when Sancherib came in and wiped everybody out except for Jerusalem, how many Jews were there? And in a situation like this, if you use a good police force and you take all the children, you teach them this, and then the children go home and they ask mommy and daddy, "Is this really true?" And the mom goes, "Yeah, it's true." I mean, of course, who's going to say otherwise? The king has commanded that this is what we need to say. Okay? So you can do it that way. That would be one way of either doing the impossible, hoisting the story on a group of people that. Right. So I think in the end the Kuzari proof is not 100% ironclad, okay,
So in
and
that scenario,
yeah,
you've always got a child that the king's new clothes. That'll say,
Yeah.
no, he's got no clothes on.
Yeah,
There's
but-
always one person or...
then you kill them, and
Oh,
that's the end of that, okay, That's not. By the way, the child in the story of the Emperor's New Clothes would probably, in a real life situation of that sort, would not have lasted very long. Wouldn't have lasted long enough to actually. But okay, that's just. I'm pretty cynical.
Skeptical, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. But okay, so I think that what we're going to find is that there's something going on over here that goes far beyond the Kuzari proof, even though. At present, that's what it looks like. What happened to the Israelites is incontrovertible. It's historical. Everybody knows it, and that's why the Israelites are the only ones who can actually prove anything about God talking to human beings or wanting to have anything to do with human beings. Right, and therefore, as the king says, "Ro'eh ani, I see ki achen en li lishol ki imet hayudim." I have no choice but to ask the Jews, because they are the remnants of the children of Israel, and I see that they are the proof to this particular matter. That God has a Torah, that God has a law that He wants followed in the earth, on this level, in this world. So then he went and called for one of the wise people of the Jews, and he asked him about his faith. Shall we go on? How are we doing for time?
Yeah.
Exactly three.
3. It's exactly 3. Okay, we'll push forward a little bit. So I believe. So Amar lo Achaver. So the Jewish sage replies as positive. Replies like this: I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that took the children of Israel with wonders and signs out of Egypt, and fed them in the desert, and gave them the land of Canaan. After he brought them through the sea and through the Jordan River, with many great wondrous events, who sent them Moshe with his Torah, and after that thousands of prophets, that all of them read the same Torah, or they called the people back to follow this Torah, and informed them that there was good reward for people who keep it, and a punishment for those who violate it. And we believe in everything that is written in this Torah, and the things are long. I don't know if he means to say that's right now enough, because it's really very, very, very long, which it happens to be. Or maybe he means to say advarim arukim, meaning it's, and all this is well known. I don't have to continue with it anymore. We believe in the Torah. Everybody knows what the Torah is. Everybody believes in our story. Okay, this is historical fact as far as anybody is concerned. Okay, the big difference between then and now, is that all of that. Okay, this is no longer historical fact in the eyes of most people. So that's one big change between the Middle Ages and now.
Americans, there's a lot in it. Americans, a lot in the Torah.
Yeah.
A lot to talk about, basically.
I guess. V'hadvarim arukim. The things are long. That's what it literally means. Okay. Now, the king is not impressed with this at first. Okay. Lo chinam hechlatati b'rishna lo l'shol et haYehudim. It was not for nothing that I decided originally not to ask the Jews, because I know that their chain of tradition has been broken already, and their minds are shrunken, and their poverty has not left them any kind of good character. Should you not have said, you Jew, that you believe in the Creator of the world, the one who organizes it and one who guides it, that has created you and who feeds you bread and sustains you, and all the other kind of things that people say about God, all the other divine attributes, that everybody who has a religion believes in them, and because of these divine attributes, he aspires to the truth and justice, because he wants to be like God in his wisdom and his justice. So what's the king's point? The king's point is that you have basically taken as your starting point of your faith some sort of personal, individual, ethnic, group experience, right? Instead of working with the universal principles of God. And that, he says, is just, it's really beneath contempt. Because religion is supposed to be about the universal. Religion is supposed to be about something that is common to all human beings. Now, maybe human beings are going to fight over which religion is the right one. Okay, but fundamentally, when the true religion gets revealed after all the battles are done, okay, it's going to be a universal religion. And of course, both Christianity and Islam do purport to be universal religions. Because the same God that is true about me is the God that is true about you, is the same God that is true about everybody. And if that God has one will, and then it's his will for all humanity, and everybody would have to accept it. So the minute you come at me with this ethnic stuff, the Lord God, not the God of the universe, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, who took us out of Egypt, who fed us in the desert, who gave us the land of Israel, like what does that have to do with religion? Or what does that have to do with any kind of noble-minded religion, or any? So really, the king is coming at this from the point of view of, listen, religion needs to start with universal first principles, And for the universal first principles, we need to get down to the nitty-gritty of what God wants us to do. And you're not working with first principles, you're working with somebody's personal experience. Okay? In particular, it's a certain kind of ethnic experience. How are you going to get a universal religion out of a bunch of people who had a certain ethnic, let's say if the Cherokee Indians, for whatever reason, got together one day and they had some sort of experience, and they were, God took all the Indians from all the other reservations out in the West and brought them back to the Smoky Mountains and established them and gave them manna and raised them up on high and built them a temple and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be very impressive for the Cherokee Indians, but what relevance would that have to anybody who isn't a Cherokee Indian? Now, the truth is that I think anyway, the king's reply here is, yeah, it's pretty good, but it also he's kind of contradicting himself, because in the end, the reasons why he didn't accept Christianity and Islam was because he couldn't buy into their stories, and it was basically, your experiences are your experiences, they're not my experiences. Okay.
So you could say the same here.
Well, first of all, you could say the same here, and the big question was why wouldn't you? But but if the king is such a universalist, and he wants to start from the cosmic idea of God and work from there, okay, then then like him, you basically, I guess you owe it to yourself to investigate the proofs more carefully. I mean, learn Arabic so you can hear the beauty of the Quran, or go dig up all the archaeology and how many witnesses there really were to the resurrection. Go do the work.
But isn't the proof that they...
So I think he's being a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah. The proof is that the Muslims and the Christians both take what they perceive as the Old Testament as proof of their ongoing religion.
Well,
so that means, the whole world believes in Judaism first.
right. That's incontrovertible. And what they all get from Judaism is the core proof that God has something in common with human beings. Okay. Now, whether God wants you to bow to a cross or to bow to Mecca, okay, that has to do already with the separate branches of that revelation, which each one claims to have like inherited exclusively. And then so if you want to get involved in Islam versus Christianity, so then you have to basically in order to verify this, you don't have enough time in your lifetime to verify it, because it means doing a whole lifetime of research on primitive Christianity. Okay, like what really was going on over there in the first century and the second century, which nobody really knows conclusively. And then you're going to have to do a whole course in Arabic, and then learn Arabic poetry so you can appreciate the beauty of the Quran. And then you're in a position to evaluate what's going on. But part of the Kuzari's attitude is, but if it's not part of my experience, then I don't have any reason to deal with it. So he's not always thinking universally. Okay, he is thinking at least on some level relativistically. That there's what you're telling me, and there's what my experience tells me, and I'm not going to uproot myself from my experience, right?
Well, you sort of got
So
got tired of saying that response, because when the Muslim guy, the last thing he said, he shot himself in the foot, because he says everything I'm telling you is because of what happened to the Jews.
Right.
So at least he's already hearing it from everybody.
Right.
So he's already sort of giving up on trying to argue that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Anyway, my point just to reiterate is that you see the king has a certain kind of relativistic slant to his reasoning, and what he's going to discover, okay, with Judaism is that Judaism operates not from the universal to the specific. It works from the specific experience to the universal. And in that respect, it operates differently than any of the other religions that he'd encountered. And that's why the Jew presents himself as, what is my religion? Well, I'm not going to talk to you about anything cosmic or universal. I'm going to say, this is our story, this is our experience. Okay? Now, of course, the Kuzari can certainly ask, well, okay, so this is your experience and your story, so what does it have to do with me?
Right, that's what I said before.
Right? That would be, yeah, absolutely. And your average person reading this would answer, but it's so publicly well known. I mean, look, everybody knows it, right? Okay, so that means that it has to be convincing to the king. And frankly, I don't know why it is, because he rejected the philosopher. He said that he conceded the philosopher was absolutely spot on in terms of everything having to do with rationality. I mean, you can't get any more public than that. Okay, so anyway, so I think we pretty much.
Maybe he's gonna say.
You know what? I'll tell you what. Let's hit one more paragraph because it's short. This is the reply of the Jew. What you say is true about any religion that is founded upon rationality and is directed towards ruling a country. And a religion that comes from investigation or rationality is subject to many doubts. And if you were to go and ask the philosophers, you would not actually find them agreeing about any one particular action or any one particular opinion. Because this whole philosophical religion is built upon claims that some of the philosophers can actually prove, okay? And some of the other things that you need can only show evidence for them, and the rest you can't even bring any substantial evidence. Certainly you can't prove it you can't conclusively prove it, right? So what he's saying is that, look, even with philosophy, which starts with just universal rationality and it works from there, you're still going to find yourself getting into questions that you can't particularly solve. There's axioms that you have to accept. There's some of these basic principles you can prove. Some of them you can show evidence for. Some of them you can't even show conclusive evidence for. But you kind of build your system with it, and you make the best sense out of it that you can, which is okay. But when you start with the way the Torah presents itself as being a experience of a certain people at a certain place and time, and you work from the specific experience outward, then you don't have room for all those philosophical doubts. Next week's question is, well, why not? Okay, how does that make a difference? And so the king says, well, I see that your words now are a bit more reasonable sounding than the way that you opened your case, and therefore I will continue to listen to what you have to say.
Okay.
We'll chop off your head this week.
Okay, so let's.
We have the rabbis.